This video is going to go through my exercise, the Eatery, a single page responsive restaurant website. And there's a couple different versions of the exercise. One, I give you content already marked up. In another, I ask you to mark up the content. So here I'm starting with the markup. If you didn't have to do the markup, you could skip to the second video in this series where we start the styling. Okay, so here is the content that you're given if you're doing the unmarked up version. I've only included the images, and then there's a bunch of text and a Google map. What we need to do is turn it into something like this. With tables, background images, background gradients, and a translucence, icon fonts, and a variety of background images, as well as some really good grid work as well. Okay, so let's start with our markup. Looking at the document, we see an area that should obviously be the header because we've got a logo. We got an image of a logo, so I'm going to put here class equals logo. I'm going to give it an alt, of course. And I'll put the name of the restaurant, the Eatery. Okay. We've got two menus. We have a logo that screams out for a header. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to use a keyboard shortcut I've put into my version of Visual Studio. Normally when we wrap, we need to do Command-Shift-P to pull up the command palette and then search for wrap with abbreviation. The reason for this is there's no default keyboard shortcut for that command, which strikes me as kind of sad, so I'm putting it in here. I do that by going Code, Preferences, Keyboard Shortcuts, and we've probably done this in another exercise, so I'm just going to do it quick. I go here, I can choose a keyboard shortcut. In my case, I'm doing Option-Shift-W or Alt-Shift-W. Okay. So I'm going to close that. What I want to do, in other words, is wrap this content in a header, Option-Shift-W. I'm going to give it a header with a class of site header. This bit, the Eatery, the name of the restaurant, I'm going to actually add the word the Eatery because it's part of the name. Then I'm going to wrap it in an H1. H1 with a class of site title. And I'm going to actually wrap the text inside it with a span with a class of visually hidden. What we're going to use here is the visually hidden code from the Alley project to accessibly hide the text while still making it available to screen readers and search engines. So I'm going to need to get the visually hidden class later. I'll do that while I'm working on the CSS. Next, I'm going to make the menu. So my main menu here, these menus there, I'm going to do them all at once. So I've made here two selections. I've made one selection, then added to the second one using the Command key. I believe if Command doesn't work on your Mac, use Option. And if you're on Windows, use Alt. Next, I want to turn these elements into single selections. So I've got two selections here. I want to make 7 individual selections. And I can do that by going to the selection menu and going add cursor to line ends, which is on Mac Option-Shift-I. What this does is it puts the cursor at the end. So now I can do Command on Mac. And if I use one of the arrow keys, left or right, it will take me, if I do the left arrow key, it will take me to the front of the line. If I do the right arrow key, it will take me to the end of the line. Oops, sorry, I screwed that up. Single selection, Alt-Shift-I, or Option-Shift-I. I'm going to add Shift to the selection that is Shift to the command that allows me to go to the front of the line. So I'm doing Command-Shift and then left arrow. Now I have 7 selections. I'm going to want these to be wrapped in an A, and I'm going to want a LI around each, and I'm going to want a span around each as well. Technically, I only need this span in the secondary menu, but having it in the header menu won't hurt either. So Option-Shift-W, I'm going to wrap LI greater than, A greater than, span. Yep. So press return there. My cursor is placed in the href value. So I'm going to put in that actual value, a £, a testing link here. So technically I don't need the spans here. I've put them in because I wanted to be really fast, but I technically didn't need them there. But here I do. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put a class of visually hidden around these words. This is going to allow us to accessibly hide the word while later hide the word while allowing us to use an icon font. So for the icon font, I'm going to go do a search for Font Awesome CDNJS. We can get this link to download Font Awesome at Font Awesome, but we have to sign up with our email address, etc. So it's a little more tedious. I'm just going to use it from a content distribution network. And I'm going to take the first link here. I'm going to copy the link tag rather than just the link. That means I can now go to the head of my document, paste the link to Font Awesome. While I'm here, I'm going to make a link to a style sheet, even though it doesn't exist yet. And then I'm going to click, I'm actually going to go to the Font Awesome website, find the icon for Facebook. I'm going to use the round Facebook, I guess. Here I can grab the HTML by copying right here. If I click on it, it will copy. I'm going to go back to Visual Studio. And what I'm going to do here is inside the link, but before the visually hidden span, I'm going to paste in the code for the icon. And I'm just going to tidy up a little bit so you can see what the code here is actually doing. I won't tidy up the subsequent ones so I'm not wasting your time watching this video. But you get the idea here, I assume. Let's see. Seems to be an extra space there. I'm not going to spend time finding where it is. Anyway. So each LI here has an A inside it. The first item in the A is an opening and closing I that has the classes that Font Awesome is giving us, which will inject the icon using a pseudo class. And then we're going to hide the word for the actual name of the site. This is going to be hidden visually, but not. It won't be hidden from screen readers or search engines. So if I test my page, we see we've got our 3 icons. I'm just going to go back and change the actual classes. So for Google Plus, if I remember correctly, it's going to be Google-Plus, whereas TripAdvisor, I think, is without the hyphen. I could be wrong. Let me see. Yeah, there we are. Great. So we have made our header menu very quickly, very easily. Oh, we've got one other item there. We have a button. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to wrap it in a button tag with a class of menu trigger, I'll call it. Oops. Button dot menu hyphen trigger. That's a useful feature. The fact that this command shows you what will be output to your page when you press return is how I spotted that syntax error. Beautiful. There's our menu, the menu button H1 set up really quickly. We don't have the visually hidden class, so we should go grab that. So I Google visually hidden. The first link will be to the Alley project, most famous accessibility site on the web probably. I'm going to grab this code. Back to Visual Studio. I'm going to add a new file, styles.css, which I've already made a link to. Paste in that visually hidden code. Go back, test my page. Now we see that the word the Eatery in the H1 is hidden, as is the text there. Okay. So back to my HTML. We got a bit of work ahead of ourselves. Next, we want to make a number of tables. And if we look at the completed one, we see that there's a table for entrees, a table for sides, a table for drinks in the breakfast section of the document. Then we have another section for lunch that has the same table structure, a table for entrees, sides, and drinks, and the whole thing, corresponding layout, is matched again in the dinner section. So I'm going to suggest we mark up the tables first, and then we'll do the sections, etc. So what we see, fortunately, the data here is laid out in a consistent way. And the way to make a very efficient markup is to spot and leverage patterns. So I think we could mark up these tables really easily. Each of these combinations, a meal plus the price, or a plate plus the price, needs to be marked up in 2 TDs, that's table data, and 1 TR. So there's a TR enclosing 2 TDs. The TDs are the cells, the TRs are the rows. Easiest way to do this would be to notice the pattern. We see that there is a $sign. And the $sign appears nowhere else in the whole page, which is quite nice. So what we can do, if we select the $sign, we can select all instances of the $sign using Command-Shift-L. And the Windows shortcut I would hope is Control-Shift-L, but I could be wrong. So if I am wrong, please look under your selection menu. So now what we've got here is this very beautiful, simple pattern. Having selected something in the middle of these combinations of meal plus price, I can press my up arrow to go to the next line. Now what I can do is put in my TR, manually coding, but it's worth it. Put in my opening TD. Visual Studio is trying to be helpful by closing it, but we don't want that. Now, so I've opened my row, I've opened my TD. Now I need to get to the end of the line. So I can use on Mac, Command right arrow. On Windows, hopefully Control or Alt right arrow. Now I want to close the TD. So I've got my first table column. Next, I go to the next line. Here, I can actually make the selection So if I do Command Shift right arrow, I've selected that element. I can wrap it. So I'm going to do Option Shift W. I'm going to wrap that in a TD. My cursor is outside the last TD. I've just got to here close the TR. I'm not even all that concerned about the formatting. But I should now have TR, 2 TDs, closing TR. If I save it, now I can use the beautify command by doing Command Shift P to bring up the command palette. That's Control Shift P on Windows. Type in beautify. If you do not get any results from this calling of the beautify extension, just install the extension. So this is not built into Visual Studio. It's an extension called beautify. I'm going to choose beautify file, and we see that our content looks more tidy. It's not absolutely perfect, but the code should be perfect. If I save the page, go look at it, we're not seeing anything yet, probably because we haven't added the table tags yet. So let's go back to our document. So if I look at what it needs to be, I'm thinking this will be a heading level of some sort. This will be the table. This will be a caption. This will be another table with a caption. This will be a third table with a caption. So what I want to do, I want to select the word entrees. We have 3 tables that should have a caption of entrees. So Command Shift L, or selection, select all current occurrences, will allow me to select all of the entrees. So here I'm going to wrap that, Command Shift I, sorry, Option Shift I or Alt Shift I, Alt Shift W, not I. I'm going to wrap that in a caption, and I'm going to press return. I'm going to go up. I'm going to put the beginning of my table. I'll just close. I'll delete the closing one. So now I have a table starting, a caption. If I go look at what we've got here, we see that some sort of tabular structure is started already on the first one. Let me check that everything's going good. So we have a table. Okay. We have a table starting. I could have been actually right now I'm going to select this opening and closing table. I'm going to do Command Shift L to select all of them, and I'm just going to replace it with just an opening table tag. Okay, save, go reload. There we go. One table. Yeah, there are tables. Most of them should be working. Let's see what our markup has given us. Next, I'm going to select sides. So that's our second caption, and I'm going to do Command Shift L to select all of the sides. I'm going to wrap it with Option Shift W in the word caption. Then I'm going to cursor up above the caption and put in an opening table, but closing or removing the closing one. I need to do the same thing for drinks. I'm going to select drinks. Command Shift L to select all iterations of drinks. And I know that they only appear in these relevant areas of the document. Here I'm going to do Option Shift W, wrap it in a caption. And then I'm going to right at top arrow, up arrow, go above the caption. Again, put in an opening table tag and deleting the closing one. So I should have here a bunch of tables that start but don't end. So it's not perfect yet, but we're getting there. You'll notice now things are looking more table-y. All we need to do is figure out, so I've got an opening table here for entrees. When the next table starts, I need to close the previous one. So what could we do here to make that happen? Here is a repeating pattern I could find. Anywhere where I have a closing TR and an opening table, I want to select all instance of. This may or may not work. I'm going to do Command-Shift-L. Depends on our spacing. And I'm going to replace, I'm just going to select it, and I'm going to go in and close the table. I have the feeling this one didn't work. Let's see. And we can see whether stuff is working effectively if you use folding. So I've got a table here from 52. Let me see if that goes all the way. Yep. That's my breakfast entrees table. Now we have the start of my sides entree table. But it didn't, our selection wasn't good. It didn't close, so I'm going to close that one. Next, our drinks table starts, but it doesn't close. So here, we're doing a little bit manually, but hopefully that's not too arduous a task. Going through here, this table didn't close. Another way we could do this is we could just search for every opening table and replace it with a closing and then an opening one, and then we would capture all of these. But I'm here doing it manually, so almost done. Table, I should just copy and paste it if I were a little smarter. So here, our entrees didn't work for dinner. Table's working there. Okay. We're missing one opening entree. Close that table. There we are. So I'm going to select that, make sure, I'm going to Command-Shift-L in case there are some other ones. Maybe I use the accent in this one and not in the other. I'm going to wrap it. It's Option-Shift-W. I'm going to wrap that in a caption. And here I'm going to put an opening table. Delete the closing one. Save and test. Table, 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 table. I'm going to prettify or beautify. There's two utilities. One's called beautify, one's called prettify. Here I'm using beautify. Next, I'm going to fold my content just to see whether I have as many tables as I think I do. Here I have 3 tables in the breakfast section. I'm going to fold the table I've got 3 tables in the lunch section. Three tables in the dinner section. Fast, beautiful. And you saw that I ended up doing a tiny bit manually there. I probably could have done it a little bit faster, but when you think about it, we've just laid out hundreds of different meal combinations in only a few minutes of keyboard shortcutting. So that's good. So here are these sections. One for breakfast, one for lunch, one for dinner. Each has 3 divs. 3 tables. So next, I'm going to want to select breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I'm going to want to wrap that in a H2 with a class of section title. So Option Shift W, H2 dot, I'm calling it section header. Okay. Then I will select each of these menu combinations. And their tables. And wrap each of them in a section. Now, the purpose of a section is to mark up a significant part of the document. And really the only thing a validator will flag with sections is a section is supposed to start with a heading level. It will give you a warning if you validate and you don't have a heading level. But that's what we have here, so I'm going to wrap all 3 of these guys. Option Shift W, section. I'm going to give it a class of meal, and a class of meal-breakfast, because I'm lazy. You'll see what I'm going to do in a second. So 3 sections. I'm folding them here to make it obvious what we've got here. The second one, I'm going to change the second class to meal-lunch. The third one will be meal-dinner. Actually, we're going to also need IDs because we're going to have links that will link to the actual place in the page. So I'm going to go here, put in an ID on each of them. ID equals, I'm just going to type in breakfast, but change the last 2 to match their actual menus. So ID equals lunch, ID equals dinner. Okay. So there's a section. I'm going to want maybe to style these in a unique way. So I'm going to wrap them in a div, and I'll just call this meal sections, maybe. Okay. So yeah, we see a lot of content here. I'm gonna click here and fold that guy, fold that guy, fold that guy. Actually, I'll just fold the sections. Nicely laid out, simple, consistent content. Another reason to get good at your mass selections in Visual Studio is it makes your markup much more consistent. Okay, should be good there. Here we have the staff section. Let's look at what it's supposed to look like. It's just a picture of each staff member: crystal ball, kangaroo, and levitate. So picture, name, and job description, I guess, job title. Each of these will be in their own separate box so that we can style them uniquely as well. So what I'm going to do is select maybe each name. I'm just going to wrap that, Option or Alt Shift W, in a div with a class of staff-member name. I'm going to select each of the descriptions, wrap that in a div with a class of staff-member description. Then each individual person, so there's crystal ball, there's kangaroo, their photo, their name, their description. I'm going to wrap each in a div with a class of staff member, singular. Here I'm folding them just to make things a little tidier for my selections. I'm going to select all 3 staff members, wrap them in a div with a class of staff members. And it's a good idea to get into patterns when you're making your classes so they're more memorable. So it's plural staff members. Each div inside is a staff member. Each additional div inside that is prefaced or has a prefix staff member and then hyphen name, staff member, hyphen description. Getting used to following patterns like this means you're not going to be troubleshooting because you couldn't remember what your classes were. So that's the staff members taken care of. We've got a contact area. Let's see, contact area, location contact. So what I'm going to do is put all of this in I'll put this in a section. So I'll give it a class of location-contact. Contact is going to be probably an H4. Let me see. I think we made, it's probably an H3. I think we made the section titles H2s. Actually, we could also argue this is a section title. So I'll do the same thing here. We'll see. We might have to change that. Wrapping it in an H2 with a class of, I think it's going to be more trouble than it's worth. I'm going to wrap it in an H2 with a class of contact section title. And we could argue this contact information should be all in one block. I'm going to give it a div, Command Shift, Option Shift W. I'm going to call it just a div with a class of contact info. Each of these guys, I'm just going to wrap in a div. I could be more specific, but I don't think I really need to be. I'm not even going to give it a class. We'll see whether we need them later. Okay. This just will allow us to treat them like blocks. And for my footer menu, I'm just going to borrow what I've got up on the top. And I'm going to add though here breakfast, lunch, and dinner in front of the pound signs. And what this will do is create a link to anything that has an ID. So I gave the breakfast menu an ID of breakfast and the dinner menu an ID of dinner, etc. For the phone, Oh, contact. Oh, we should have. I'll just leave it the way it is. But we could actually. No, oh no, this is the contact section. So I think it was contact-info. Save. Okay. Oh, I noticed one thing we did here. Our menu, we didn't actually add ULs or navs to it. So while we're here, selecting that one box, I've got a bunch of LIs here. Select that box. My apologies, I should have done this earlier. You cannot use LIs on their own. They're supposed to be marked up with ULs as parents, or OLs, or whatever the case may be. And typically your main navigation is going to be in a nav, so I'm going to wrap both of these elements in a nav and a UL. So here, nav greater than UL, bang, marked up nicely. Let's take the nav from the header and put it in the footer. Actually, we should have a footer here. Footer class site footer, like so. Our content should now be marked up more or less in a good way. So you notice here I just used divs. Makes sense. Yeah, that's our markup. In the next video we will see what we can do about styling.